Corporate earnings calls are designed to sound confident. Executives speak carefully, numbers are framed positively, and uncertainty is managed with polished language. On the surface, these calls often suggest control, clarity, and steady progress. But beneath the scripted remarks and carefully chosen words, there is a different story unfolding. To understand the real state of corporate America, it helps to focus not just on what earnings calls say, but on what they quietly avoid saying out loud. One of the biggest unspoken messages in earnings calls is uncertainty about the future. Executives rarely admit this directly. Instead, they use phrases like limited visibility, dynamic conditions, or evolving demand. These are signals that forecasting has become harder. Companies may be delivering solid results today, but they are far less confident about what comes next. The absence of strong long-term guidance often says more than the guidance itself. Another thing earnings calls avoid stating clearly is how fragile demand can be. Revenue numbers may look stable, but executives often emphasize selective consumer behavior or cautious customers. What they are not saying outright is that customers are more price-sensitive, more hesitant, and quicker to pull back than before. Even when sales are holding up, companies are aware that demand can soften quickly if conditions change. Cost pressure is another reality that is rarely spoken plainly. Instead of saying costs are difficult to control, executives talk about ongoing efficiency initiatives or continued cost discipline. These phrases hint that margins are under pressure and require constant management. When a company repeatedly emphasizes efficiency, it often means there is little room for error. Profits are being protected carefully, not expanded effortlessly. Earnings calls also tend to downplay how much recent performance has been driven by internal tightening rather than growth. Strong results are often the outcome of cost cuts, delayed investments, or restrained hiring. Executives highlight operational discipline, but they rarely say how finite those actions are. There are only so many costs that can be trimmed before growth must do the heavy lifting again. Hiring language on earnings calls is another area where silence speaks volumes. Companies may say they are being selective or aligning workforce with priorities. What they often avoid saying is that they are intentionally slowing hiring to preserve flexibility.